Donald Trump has just reached his highest point in the prediction market odds since Kamala Harris became the Democratic nominee. But is this surge also showing up in the polls? Let's find out by looking at the latest electoral map based on the most recent polls from each competitive state. Vice President Kamala Harris jumps out to an early lead from the states that are very likely to vote one way. She has 199 electoral votes, while former President Donald Trump has locked in 149 votes from his own strongholds. That leaves 12 states still in play, the battlegrounds that will ultimately decide who crosses the critical threshold of 270 to win the presidency. We'll go in order of poll closing time, so starting in Georgia, where the first votes will come in shortly after 7 p.m. on election night. The latest survey via Quinnipiac University has Trump leading by 5 percentage points, garnering a 50% vote share over Harris's 45% among 942 likely voters surveyed between September 25th and 29th. Georgia is a critical battleground closely contested by both campaigns, but here based on this latest poll, it goes firmly in the lean Republican column. Long a reliable red state, Joe Biden flipped Georgia blue for the first time since 1996, winning by 0.2%, his narrowest margin in the 2020 cycle. One of the key concerns for Democrats right now is their eroding support among black voters. Polling crosstab aggregators show Trump has gained an average of 19 points among black voters compared to his 2020 performance. Even if Trump retains just half of that gain, it could prove devastating for Democrats, given how tight the 2020 result was. Next up, also closing their polls at 7 p.m. is the Commonwealth of Virginia. The latest poll from Emerson College shows Harris leading Trump by 7 points among 860 likely voters, with 52.7% for Harris and 46.2% for Trump. These respondents were contacted between September 22nd and 24th. The fact that Harris leads by such a margin should hardly come as a surprise considering the fundamentals in Virginia. Joe Biden carried the state's 13 electoral votes by a 10-point margin in 2020. So while a 7-point lead represents a slight underperformance compared to Biden, it's still a comfortable enough margin to keep Virginia in the likely Democrat category for Harris on the map. All right, the next set of polls closing is at 7:30 p.m., and that brings us to North Carolina. Always competitive, Donald Trump carried the Tar Heel state by just over a point in 2020. This marked the 8th consecutive federal election for president or U.S. Senate, where the GOP candidate won by less than 6 points, a remarkable streak of close Republican-leaning outcomes. As we look at 2024, the polls once again show another tight race. The latest data from RMG Research has Trump up by 4 points, with 51% of the vote compared to Harris's 47%, and 3% of the 780 likely voters still undecided. This margin places North Carolina in the lean Republican column, where it joins Georgia on the map. At 8 o'clock, the polls will close in New Hampshire, worth 4 electoral votes. Typically, it's the most competitive state in the Northeast, excluding Pennsylvania, yet it still backed Biden by a clear 7-point margin in the 2020 election. Now here in 2024, not one poll has shown Trump within striking distance since Harris took over as the Democratic nominee. This latest survey via St. Anselm College has Harris leading by an identical margin, as in Virginia, 7 percentage points. Harris is polling at 51%, Trump at 44%, and third-party candidates barely registering at 1% or less. Over 2,000 likely voters were surveyed for this poll in early October. Given this solid lead, we can place New Hampshire in the likely Democrat column on the map. Now we arrive at Pennsylvania, undoubtedly the most crucial state on the map for both campaigns. According to Nate Silver's latest presidential forecast, Pennsylvania has a 32% chance of tipping the election, almost double that of any other state. A win here boosts both Harris and Trump's chances of reaching 270 electoral votes to about 90%. In other words, it's highly unlikely that either candidate wins Pennsylvania without also winning the White House. The latest poll from the Trafalgar Group shows Trump leading by 2 points, with 47.5% to Harris's 45.3%. This survey sampled 1,100 voters between September 26th and 29th. Now, obviously, as is the nature of polling, these numbers are out of date as soon as they're released. That is why I like to compare them with betting markets, which are dynamic, real-time reflections of public sentiment, adjusting constantly as new information comes in. Right now, the odds over on BetOnline favor the Republicans at minus 130, while Democrats are underdogs at plus 100. This translates to a roughly 56% chance of victory for Trump, aligning with the current polling data. If you want to check out the odds in other key swing states, I'll leave a link down below for you. Back on our electoral map, we'll place Pennsylvania in the tilt Republican column. For reference, on this map, margins under 3 points are considered tilt, 3 to 7 points are lean, 7 to 10 are likely, and anything over 10 points is marked safe. Wrapping up the 8 p.m. closing time is Florida, a state once synonymous with the term swing state, but now solidly Republican-leaning. Trump actually increased his margin in Florida in 2020 compared to 2016, making it one of only 5 states where he improved his performance. Then in 2022, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio were both reelected by more than 15 points each, solidifying the state's redshift. Now in 2024, the latest poll from Siena College and the New York Times shows Trump leading by 14 points. Yes, you read that correctly, 14 points from one of the most trusted pollsters in the industry. This poll sampled 622 likely voters between September 29th and October 6th, and the result is a remarkable shift. This level of support places Florida squarely in the safe Republican category on our electoral map. Fast forwarding to 9 p.m., the polls will close in all but one of our remaining states, Nevada, which closes at 10. Let's begin up in the Midwest with 3 of the 4 states in the Upper Rust Belt Quartet, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, alongside Pennsylvania. These states consistently voted blue in every presidential election from 1988 until 2016. That's when Donald Trump flipped Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin while coming within just 2 points of Hillary Clinton in Minnesota. 4 years later, Joe Biden managed to flip Pennsylvania back, winning by 1.2%, along with Michigan by 2.8% and Wisconsin by a narrow 0.6%, while expanding the Democratic margin in Minnesota to a more comfortable 7 points. Now let's start in Michigan, where another poll from Siena College and the New York Times this time shows Harris in the lead by a single percent. It's 48% to Harris and 47% to Trump among the 688 likely voters included in this sample. This aligns with the average in Michigan. Decision Desk HQ and The Hill have the VP leading by 0.3% based on an average of every poll surveyed this cycle. This is the narrowest lead she has held since late July. Still on our map, Michigan will go in the tilt Democrat column. I tend to see Michigan as a must-win for Harris. It's hard to see a scenario in which she loses the state and still hits 270. Shifting gears over to Wisconsin, demographically speaking, it is the whitest and most rural of the 3 Rust Belt battlegrounds, which typically favors Republicans. Yet Trump has consistently polled the worst in Wisconsin compared to Michigan and Pennsylvania throughout this election cycle, until recently. Harris's lead has now narrowed to less than a point, which is a significant change from August and September when she was leading by 3 to 4 points. The latest poll from the Democracy Institute shows Trump now leading by 2 points, with 48% to Harris's 46%, based on a sample of 375 likely voters between October 2nd and 3rd. It's also worth remembering that Wisconsin was home to 2 of the largest polling misses in both 2016 and 2020, where Trump outperformed by almost 7 points in 2016 and nearly 8 points in 2020. Given this recent momentum for Trump, we'll place Wisconsin in the tilt Republican category on the map. If it wasn't already clear that Trump is on track to hit 270 electoral votes, this shift in Wisconsin certainly points in that direction. Finally, let's wrap up the Midwest here in Minnesota, worth 10 electoral votes. It doesn't get the same attention as the other 3 states here, given that it hasn't voted Republican in more than 50 years, actually holding the longest active blue streak in the nation. While it seemed to be competitive with Biden in the race, Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, have consistently led Trump in every poll since Biden dropped out. The latest poll from Redfield and Wilton Strategies even shows Harris leading Trump by a greater margin than Biden did in 2020. Harris is up 8 points among 551 registered voters surveyed between September 27th and October 2nd. With that, we can comfortably place Minnesota in the likely Democrat column on our electoral map. Now, Harris has temporarily retaken the lead in the race to 270 by a single electoral vote, with 241 over Trump's 240. Before we finish off the video in our final 3 states here in the Southwest, a quick reminder, only about 20% of you are subscribed, so please take a moment to hit the free subscribe button below for more content like this leading up to Election Day. Now let's turn to the Lone Star State, Texas, with its 40 electoral votes, the second largest prize on the map. Joe Biden earned a higher vote share in Texas in 2020 than any Democrat since Jimmy Carter, whose victory in 1976 marked the last time Texas voted blue. Yet with Republican gains among Hispanic voters in the Rio Grande Valley, Democrats don't enter this cycle with as much momentum as you'd think. And the latest poll suggests he might even expand his margin here up to 6 points. Trump is polling at 50% and Harris at 44% among 617 likely voters surveyed between September 29th and October 4th. That means Texas leans in Trump's favor here, officially lifting him up and above 270 electoral votes with 280. Just 2 states remain, and they are likely to be the final 2 called as the election week drags on. One interesting historical fact I recently came across is that in every presidential election where the White House has changed hands between parties, the winning candidate flipped a state their party hadn't won the last time they took the presidency. For Trump, Nevada is easily his best opportunity to keep that streak going, since he won almost every other battleground on the map in 2016, aside from Minnesota, Virginia, and New Hampshire, which lean more Democratic. Let's hit Arizona first, though. The latest poll from Fabrizio Ward, conducted between September 24th and October 1st of around 600 likely voters, shows Trump leading by 2 points, 50% to Harris's 48%. That puts Arizona in the tilt Trump column. This would break the streak of 5 straight major statewide races in Arizona going to Democrats. Finally, in Nevada, while Biden won Nevada by more than 2 points in 2020, the state has trended rightward, moving 7 points to the right of the national average since 2012, when Obama carried it by 7 points. Then, in the 2022 midterms, Republicans flipped the governorship and garnered more U.S. House votes than Democrats for the first time in decades. Now here in 2024, Nevada is a true 50-50 battleground, and it could swing either way, whether staying blue for Harris or flipping to Trump. The latest poll from BSG/GS Strategy Group, a collaboration between Democratic and Republican-aligned firms, has Harris leading by 1 point, 48% to 47%, among 409 likely voters. This leaves Nevada in the tilt Democrat column, completing the electoral map projection with Trump securing 291 electoral votes and a second non-consecutive term, while Harris ends with 247 electoral votes. As always, feel free to let me know in the comments what you think of this map and suggest any other videos or topics you'd like to see in the future. That does it for today's video, though. Shout out to my channel members in the description below. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.